Hello everyone, Marco Montemagno here, Digital Domination Summit 2013, and with me, founder and CEO of the Muse, Kathryn Minshew. And when I tell your surname, I'm so embarrassed because my surname, Montemagno, is even more difficult. So, but where is it from, Minshew? Is Russia or
Yeah,
something like that?
it's Scotch-Irish, actually.
Cool.
And there's a number of Minshews in Texas, Alabama. I think I just heard from some in Idaho. I actually grew up in the Washington, D.C. area, but a lot of my relatives are from sort of Dallas, Fort Worth,
All right.
Hawkins, Texas area. So that's where it's from.
Oh, cool. For my surname, people they simply can't say Montemagno. So I created a SoundCloud with how to pronounce my surname in case, little
In
tip
case
if you
people
need
need
it in the
it. See,
future.
I like it because I can always tell if someone's calling me and they don't know me because they'll ask for, Kathryn Minshew or something else. And I'm like, yeah, okay, it's a telemarketer,
Yeah,
for
right.
example.
So, Kathryn, the Muse, for the people watching this video, and if you don't know the Muse, I think when I was looking for speakers for Digital Domination Summit, I thought, gosh, one topic very interesting is how to find job, and all this kind of stuff. And the interwebs is full of websites about job and, the big web portals from the 2000 and so on. And then I just found the Muse. And by the way, you passed through Y Combinator, or I'm wrong?
Yes, we
Right.
were a
So
Y Combinator company.
right. And then I saw the Muse and I thought, gosh, this is very interesting because the approach that these guys and, and these girls they trying to get is really different. So on one side, tips on careers. On the other side, show me how a company is, the behind the scenes of a company. So if I want to get a job, I don't know, in Facebook, I can go on the Muse and see how Facebook is really look like and try to figure out. Is it right, my perception? This is the way that you're trying to go?
Absolutely. And we kind of started from the question of how do people figure out what they want to do with their lives? And ultimately, when you think about it, the sort of, for lack of a better word, the relationship that people have with the company they work for, it's one of the biggest in their life. I mean, other than the relationship they might have with a spouse or a parent or with a child, you spend so many hours a day with your job. It's a huge predictor of your happiness. And so I started thinking, why is it that most job boards focus on the job that you'll be doing? If you go to any of the big sites you mentioned, you will kind of type in some keywords and you'll get this massive list. And it's like the title, the salary, the director of marketing will be responsible for compiling annual reports, blah, blah, blah. Like, what a director of marketing does. That's not really what you're trying to figure out. You're trying to figure out, is this position for me? And more broadly, what would my life be like if I applied to and were accepted to work at this company? And that's what we try and offer at the Muse.
Right. Kathryn, let me ask you, obviously I want to get your tips for people watching this video about this job war that is so interesting, especially in this moment with recession, depression, crisis, unfortunately. But on the other side, I'm curious about the Muse and the story. Also, I saw you mentioned as top 30, under 30, this kind of rankings. I quit giving all the titles of the speakers. Otherwise, I should do a digital donation summit with reading all the titles of the speakers. So, but obviously, you achieving a lot of cool results, also personal results. But let me understand how, when you launched the Muse, how did you solve the famous problem, chicken egg? I mean, how do you find people looking for a job and how do you attract company? Where did you start from?
Yeah, I mean, so I love that question because I'm very proud of our answer to it. And it's interesting because that's something we were actually criticized for early on quite a bit. But we actually started with job search and career content. And the content is a really critical part of our business, and it's one that I think a lot of people have undervalued for a really long time. But we realized no company is going to pay to post a job on a job site where there are no job seekers. And what's more, companies, they care about who are the job seekers you have. So they want smart people, ideally people who are employed or who have other options, people who are kind of aspirational about their careers.
Right.
And we thought, how are we going to get these people? We're going to provide them with the other thing they need, which is really great career content. I went through this myself. I used to work at McKinsey & Company as a management consultant, and there were so many things professionally that I had questions about. So, how do you negotiate a salary, and when is the appropriate time? How do you deal with a boss who's a micromanager? How do you even think of setting up an informational interview, and how do you make sure that it's an appropriate experience for you, that you're learning, that it's a great experience for the person you're interviewing? I mean, I could go on. There's, this is what I talk about all day, every day. But ultimately, we felt like there was just a real lack of great content about these career issues, and that if we built up a community around answering some of those questions, fostering the discussion, and made sure that the quality of the content was really high, because people see through crap content like that, that we would create an audience and a community, and then we could get the job seekers on board. So we didn't even have job postings on the site for 4 months after we launched.
It was just editorial content in the beginning.
And a lot of people really kind of looked down on us for that. We were told, you're never going to get anywhere. You're just a little niche blog. This isn't the way to start. And I thought they were all wrong. And I still think they're all wrong. And it's been actually very satisfying as we've grown. We now have almost 1 million job seekers every month. And this is with no marketing budget. We didn't even have somebody doing marketing or doing growth until about 2 or 3 months ago. It's just really happened at an incredible pace. And I think it's because we built up the brand and the community and the trust first, and then let our users, our readers, tell their friends and spread the word. And so once we did add job listings, it was such a natural fit.
Basically, you did reverse what all the companies in the world are trying to do now. I mean, I was at the last Social Media World Forum, and I was the moderator one day, and for one day I only heard people saying, oh, now all the company are media company, and now content is king again after so many years. Yeah, content is king again. And so now we need editorial content. We have the product, but we don't have the content. So you started from editorial content to arrive to the offer. And then how did you approach companies to get, the posting, and also I guess the business is coming out from the companies to put job.
So we actually initially designed what we wanted the company profile page to look like, and we knew we wanted it to be just visually stunning, so that when a company saw it, they looked at it and they thought, I want one of these. I want my company to be presented in this way. And we actually did a mock-up of a company profile for Google based on publicly available photos of the Google campus, just to give people an idea of what it would look like. And then the very first, and then we approached 5 companies. They were all companies that were local. We did Kiva, Justin TV, Clout out in San Francisco, and 2 others. And we basically said, we're going to do this completely for free. You'll have full control. We'll work with you. We're going to make it look amazing. And will you let us come in? And all of them said, absolutely. And once we had those first 5, then it almost became easy. We pushed them live on the site, and we included a button that said, do you want your company to be featured? Click here for pricing and more information.
Right.
We had 100 companies click within the first 24 hours.
Amazing.
Yeah, and we knew at that point, we deliberately didn't put a lot of resources into the first launch because we wanted to test if it was really solving what companies needed and what users needed. I'm a big proponent of the lean startup methodology and putting out a minimum viable product. And so we really did that with these company profiles. In fact, I wish I could show you some of the early, the landing page, because it is ugly. It is really ugly. But at that point, the point was, do these companies' profiles, are they attractive? Do they serve their purpose? And the answer was yes. And so once we saw that demand from companies, and once we heard the feedback from users, then I made a list of the 30 most kind of inspirational, awesome, attractive companies that I wanted on the platform.
Right.
And I just started calling them. And 25 of them said yes.
Okay. Wow.
And
excellent conversion rate,
too.
Kathryn.
They paid for it too, which was great. Thank you.
But one question, Kathryn, and then we go further. But how do you scale this kind of business? This is, I normally never do this question because I hate this question when they do it to me, but I have to do this kind of question. So the business model is that you go to companies and say, look, we create a behind the scenes about your company, and we create a amazing page on our website. In this way, people looking for a job, they will, see everything, and they would probably fall in love for your company, okay? But to produce this material, I mean, I guess you need to maybe create a video, collect information. It's not something that you push a button and get result, right? So, and it's a lot of editorial angle also in there. How can you scale this kind of business?
Yeah. So, firstly, people assume...
You hated this question, I know, but I have to do it.
No, you know what? I love it, actually. I love it. I think that there is a frequent misconception in startups that what you do in the beginning is what you do at scale. And when you dig deeper into the stories of some of the world's best startups, like eBay, for example, you see that that's not the case. When eBay first launched, they literally sent people with cameras to take pictures of an item. So if you listed a great pair of shoes, it wasn't necessarily common yet for people to have their own camera to take a picture to upload it. So they would actually send someone to your house to take a picture of your shoes and put it online so you could sell them on eBay.
Yes.
That doesn't scale, but you don't need to do that forever. When we did our first 5, I personally went into the companies, made them feel very comfortable, created the profile for them. The companies were floored. When we did the next 25, it was someone from our team who we had hired. Now it's a team of freelancers. We actually modeled it after the Airbnb model, where we connect with great local photographers and dispatch them to create the profile. So I don't want to give away our secret sauce because this interview may live, but I will just say it costs us very little to produce the profiles, and we ultimately will turn it over to the companies to DIY and to own their own. But while you're still a growing brand, your brand is of the utmost importance. And if someone goes right now to, say, Pinterest, and they see an ugly board, they don't say Pinterest sucks. They say that person doesn't know how to use Pinterest.
Yeah, right.
When people come to the Muse and see a company done badly, and they don't think, what's the Muse, this site sucks, they think that company doesn't know how to use the Muse, then DIY away. But we have a little bit longer to get there, and I actually think we're getting close. But the system we have right now scales to the point at which we could onboard probably several hundred companies a month, and I think we're still in that middle phase before we switch it to full DIY. But I think it's absolutely scalable.
I love it, Kathryn, because most of I think the phrase that you said in the beginning, that I hope is in Creative Commons because I will steal it. The fact that a company start and the way that you start is not the way that you scale. I totally agree with that, and absolutely makes really sense, and is a good lesson for everyone, because if you can prove also that something, with your MVP, you prove that it works, you get traction, and then you figure out how to scale. So excellent. Let's go to people looking for a job. In this moment, so many people looking for a job. I was talking with Seth Godin the other day, and he punched me every 2 seconds, because when you speak with Seth Godin, you say something and say, no, I don't think so. Sorry, Seth. Great, and my mind at the end of the interview was, exploding.
Yeah.
But one kind of mantra that is pushing in this moment is picking yourself. So if no one is picking you, you just pick yourself and you just basically go your way. In your experience, I mean, you see a lot of people looking for a job. Number one, how could you really find your niche, your passion? Everyone talk about your passion. In your experience on the Muse and your personal experience, do you have any tip on that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's certainly a challenging topic. It's one that preoccupies people often for a lot of their 20s and, many, many times into their 30s and 40s and beyond is how do you figure out what you're passionate about? I think there's a few kind of broad strategies to do it. Obviously, the same thing doesn't necessarily work for everyone, but we see a lot of people on the Muse who do a combination of things. One is if you're currently employed, if you have a job, thinking, are there areas in your company outside of your specific function that you can get involved to test out? Because I think one of the hardest things about figuring out what you want to do with your life is you feel like you have to pick in 1, 2, 3 year blocks. Pick a job, you're stuck there, and if you don't like it, you have to wait an amount of time until you pick again. So it's one of the things I really encourage people to do informational interviews and to think as well about volunteering or part-time opportunities. So for example, when we were getting started with the Muse, we were dead broke. I mean, ramen broke. And we didn't have enough money to hire almost anybody to do anything, but we were approached by 2 really smart women independently who said, we love what you're doing and we would love to help out with social media. Neither of them worked in social media, but they volunteered their skills kind of 5-10 hours a week remotely and helped us get started and build up social media, and then used that experience to decide if they wanted to transition into a career in social media. That's one way people have done it. I think a lot of people also use informational interviews, which is finding people who are doing something that you think you might want to do, but you're not sure, and seeing if you can buy them coffee and get 20 minutes of their time, coming prepared with a series of good questions about what does a typical day in your life look like? How did you get to where you are? What are the great things about your job, and what's really hard? And then to some extent, we actually tried to recreate that experience on the Muse with all of the people profiles. So if you go to themuse.com/people, you can look at hundreds of video interviews with people who are in sales, marketing, operations, engineering, HR, social media, editorial, and hear them talk about, how did they get to where they are? What do they do in a day? Right. And I think that sort of exploration is really helpful, because ultimately you're going to be much more successful in finding a passion and then finding a job that pays you for that passion. The more clear you are about what it is, and the more you understand about what are the different paths that other people in your field have taken to get there. Because there's not one path to any job anymore. People are taking very winding, circuitous routes.
While you were speaking, I was also thinking that another advantage that I see in the Muse, and then I will finish, and then I want my free coffee paid, for this spot, for unpaid advertising, is that I was thinking, I give you my example, I'm an entrepreneur, I'm not looking for a job, okay? So sometimes I see on LinkedIn, they suggest jobs, but I'm not interested in finding a job. On the other side, I was reading maybe articles on the Muse, and I can come on the Muse to read some content, even if I'm not looking for a job. But it's something that improve maybe your skills, or give you ideas or tips, or maybe suggest some interesting people to contact. So it's a different approach to job that I like the most. It's more soft. It's more maybe you don't find a job. You're not looking for a job now, but in the future, maybe something change, right?
Yeah, I think of it as relationship-based versus transactional. So many job products out there, they are focused on that transaction, on, you need a job, I will get you a job.
Yeah.
But that's only, that's such a, I think, shallow way to look at the world. Many people these days, there are definitely people out there who need to find a job right now, but many more, they're looking for a job, but they want it to be the right job, and they're not necessarily sure, is this the right direction, or is that the right direction? Or they have a job that's fine, and they know they want to do something different eventually, but they don't want a new job right now. So how do you engage those people and develop a relationship? And as you said, I want people to come to the Muse even when they have no intention of finding a new job.
Right.
I would love for people to be on the site and have their boss, walk in their office and catch them and think, oh, you're on the Muse. Cool. You're probably reading about how to be a better manager. Exactly. Cool.
Okay.
And I think that removing that stigma and saying, look, it's no longer about looking for a new job, once every 3 or 4 years. It's about constantly thinking about where you are in your career, where you might like to go, and also taking some of the stress out of it as well. I think a lot of people think of job search as this, horrible, stressful process, and it is, but it shouldn't be. I think it should be something interesting where you get to sort of explore a lot of different options and take away some of the pressure.
Yeah. Kathryn, I recently rewatched again an interview to Steve Jobs, and I think it was Charlie Rose. And Charlie Rose said, Steve, I mean, you are so amazing, and started to do a lot of compliments to Steve Jobs. And in a moment, Steve Jobs stopped the interviewer and said, look, it's not about me, it's just that I created a great team, and delegation is so important. And every time you hear a great entrepreneur speaking, it's always about how you're good in hiring great talents, delegate, and obviously be the leader of this team. But hiring good people is so important. So what are your suggestions for companies that are in this moment, they're looking for talents? In my experience, I got some great teams and some horrible experiences, and when you have an horrible experience, it's also your fault that you didn't hire very well. And so what's your take on it?
Yeah, well, first of all, I think companies that need to hire should sign up for the Muse.com. But other than that, yeah, I think there's a couple things. In terms of, there's two big questions here. One is attracting candidates, and the other is kind of interviewing and vetting candidates. In terms of attracting candidates, the best things that companies can do is be specific. And what I mean by that is no company is going to win by trying to appeal to everyone, by trying to be, the best company on earth, because employees are very different. They have personalities, they're people, and ultimately companies are a collection of those people. And companies that I've seen be most successful in attracting passionate candidates who really want to work for them are the ones who say, this is who we are, and this is who we are not. And we are going to be deliberate and specific about creating a culture, about the way things go down here, the way that we operate, and we're going to openly communicate that to people. And if some people don't like it, that's okay, but other people are going to love it. I think that's when you get passion from people who want to join your team and to work on what you're doing. In terms of interviewing, I mean, that's very challenging. And to be honest, we're still working on it here at the Muse. We're interviewing right now for salespeople, for a marketing intern, and it's hard. I think there's a few things we found that definitely reduce the chance of making mistakes. One is asking people to do some pre-work that actually mimics what they'll be doing in the role. So, for example, we ask salespeople to prepare a little bit on how they would approach the city of Atlanta, assuming that we have no companies in Atlanta and we don't know anyone. Right. And then we have them do mock sales calls and things, but having people prepare something ahead of time, I was going to say pen to paper, but these days it's more like fingers to keyboards. That gives you a much clearer sense than having people talk through it, right, of what their work product is going to look like. And to that vein, I also think my co-founder, Alex, who's our COO, she asks the best questions in interviews. And I've gotten much better at watching her. At the Muse, we don't hire anyone that Alex hasn't approved, because I tend to empathize with people. Yeah. I connect with them emotionally. Right. Alex is the one who's like, I'm going to ask the really hard question, and I'm not going to take BS. I'm going to really get your answer. And so it's fascinating. She'll ask questions about, tell me a time when you were dealing with a client or a business partner who was really furious at you and how you handled it. And she'll follow up and ask questions and understand and make them walk through. Do they understand why this person was angry? How did they handle it? What can we learn about them based on how they tell the situation? And it's not perfect. We've certainly made mistakes, but okay. That once we started getting to those sorts of questions, or open-ended questions, why did you decide to take that job? You get very interesting responses. Certain people will say, "Oh, I don't know, it's
nothing to do.
I
just came here."
Exactly, and other people will really think critically and say, "Well, here's how I thought about it," and you get this insight into their decision-making process that's fascinating and very helpful.
Yeah. Kathryn, we went really, really long, but I have a question that I ask to all the speakers at Digital Domination Summit, and is I'm always curious of the best 3 apps or 3 websites or 3 digital tools that speakers use in their everyday life, because this often gives you an idea. A speaker say, I have Angry Birds, but because his kid was installing it. No, but I'm joking. But very interesting. I got so many different answers on this, and you see how people decide to spend their time and what kind of tools they use to be more effective or productive. Do you have a specific 3 tools that you would recommend?
Yeah, gosh, that's a great question. So the number 1 tool for me is Boomerang. I'm absolutely addicted to it. I don't know if you're familiar with Boomerang.
The Gmail extension.
Exactly, the Gmail extension.
High
Great.
five.
Yes, I don't even know how I would function without Boomerang. I am constantly dealing with this, several hundred emails. I probably get 400 every day exactly. And so I go down through them and I'm like boomeranging them out to here and kind of, coming them back. And I love Boomerang. It's absolutely just essential for me in terms of how I process the amount of information in a given day. I recently started using Pocket, and I love it. It's an iPhone app that basically, people are always sending me interesting articles to read, or somebody will tweet something, and I'm like, oh, I want to read that. And I think part of being kind of building and maintaining a really great network of people as a startup founder means that you obviously are constantly conversing with people, and it's important to me to be more or less up to date on a lot of what's going on in the world.
Right.
But that takes away from, it's easy for me to get distracted because I love reading the news. So Pocket, it's a Chrome plugin and an app where as someone sends me this great article and I click save it to Pocket, and then I have it on my phone, even if I'm in the subway and there's no Wi-Fi, and I can read. And it's a beautiful interface. It's actually much easier to read than most websites. Anyway, fantastic. And then I think the last is AnyList. It's a list-making app. It's it's very, very basic. But I make lists for all sorts of things. I'm probably going home to see my parents soon. I'm going to try and make it home for Mother's Day. And I make a list of things I need to bring home because I won't remember otherwise. I have lists of books I want to read. I have lists of things that I want to do when I'm no longer making, a ramen salary, and I have a little bit of disposable income. I have a bucket list in there of things I'd like to do with my life.
All right.
Write a book and open a restaurant.
Gosh, Kathryn, do you remember who was Sarah Jessica Parker in the movie that she was doing list every day? She got the list opening. And, yeah, cool.
And it's funny. I don't like some of the the ones that are farther out. I don't necessarily use them all that often, but it's nice. Like, the other day, I was thinking about how much I enjoyed. I got to take a flight in like an 8-person prop plane recently. It was really neat. And I was thinking, yeah, I would love to have my pilot's license. And so anyway, I ended up just adding that to my list. And it was kind of nice. Like, I could just quickly put it in there and
do it.
Yeah, now it's on my list.
Kathryn, thank you so much. The Muse, Kathryn Minshew. Just have a look at the website, and definitely is the right website if you're looking for a job, if you want to hire, or just if you want to have some ideas about your career. Is definitely the website to go. Kathryn, thank you so much.
Thank you. I had a great time.
Good luck for everything.